G'day, mate. What's your
Hey,
name?
my name is Tim Renkema, and I'm a stand-up comedian, a podcaster, and an inspiring radio presenter and television host.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, before I talk about today's guest, I do need to do some shameless plugging. I would love you to come along to my show in Sydney Thursday, October 17. It's called Barney Lives. It's at Happy Endings Comedy Club in King's Cross. It's going to be a really fun night. So if you're in or around Sydney, I'd love to see you at that one. If you're in Newcastle, I will be at the Cardiff RSL on the 18th. So the next night, I'm going to be up at the Cardiff RSL with Tommy Dean and Steph Broadbridge. We're doing a show up there, and that is going to be a lot of fun too. So you can get those details if you go to my social media, my Linktree or Facebook event, or if you're in Newcastle, go to Cardiff RSL's website and you can get tickets through the club. Yeah, so there's the plugs. I'd love to see you at a live show. It's kind of the thing I'm best at the moment. Now, today's episode, Tim Renkema. Now, Tim, this was a fun chat because I didn't know Tim well, and I knew he had a bit of a background in radio, but I didn't know the extent to which he'd worked in radio and the different things he'd done. So, yeah, this was a good chat because I learnt a lot about Tim. Lovely bloke. One of the things I admire about Tim is he's willing to say what he wants out of this career. He's willing to put his ambition out there, which is kind of cool and a bit refreshing for Australia at least. It's one of those things where it's hard to admit that you're ambitious for things. So I really sort of appreciated that from Tim. Yeah, a really interesting chat. It's a bit longer than a lot of the episodes because yeah, we just kept chatting. He had some questions for me towards the end. So yeah, I think you're going to enjoy this chat. Now, if you'd like to follow Tim, he is on Instagram at Renkemuffin. His podcast, which I'm an upcoming guest on, is called I Came Here With Nothing. Basically, we commentated an episode of Deal or No Deal. So yeah, it's a fun concept. It was a lot of fun to do. I really got into it. Yeah, I like a bit of competition, and I like watching that. So yeah, that was a fun episode. Check that out. Other than that, if you're enjoying the podcast, like, subscribe, all that good sort of stuff. That'll do for now, I reckon. Just let's enjoy this. This is my chat with Tim Renkema. Nice. I like it. It's all laid out there right at the start.
I'm a real wannabe.
A real wannabe. But I don't know, like, I think if you, the first part, especially in Australia, the hardest part I think I found when I was starting out was to admit, not just to yourself, but then to other people, to be willing to say to other people, this is actually what I want to do.
Yeah, well, I used to lie. I went
Really?
to school and I was like, yeah, I might just be behind the scenes. I
Mm.
might be a director, I might be a producer, I might even be a writer. And even saying writer was nerve-wracking because
Yeah.
that's like creative. But really, I wanted to be on the mic, whether that be stand-up or radio. That's what I really wanted to do, but I was too embarrassed to admit that. And I once said it in a classroom, what do you want to do? And it was sort of towards the end of high school when you're thinking about careers. And I said, I want to be a radio presenter. And this young girl in my class said, oh, yeah, you've got a face for radio. And I was like, you fucking hack. Like, the funny thing is, she was a real dog, like a proper bush pig. And I'm like, don't have a go at me, sweetheart. You're a muppet. And she's had a lot of plastic surgery. And I
Really?
was like, who's got the face for radio now? Hey, like, you've got a shit voice and a shit face. So at least I got one. I got an okay voice. I
Well,
might have a rude head.
at least it didn't get to you either. Like, it's not something you've held on to.
Oh no! I have thought about confronting her about
Really?
it, but also to be like, "Hey, this face for radio is getting some modeling work, sweetheart.
Mm.
How's your life going? Don't you have like 8 kids to 8 different dads and live in a fucking caravan?
Yeah, you
I'm
know
doing
what though?
fine."
I guarantee she doesn't even remember that comment.
No, I've brought up beefs with people because I feel like I hold on to things, and they're like, "Dude, I don't even remember that." So I definitely need to stop living the way I live.
That
Just
is,
move on.
it is so much, and I mean, it's hard to do, especially doing like the stuff with all the creative stuff and with wanting to present and doing comedy and all that sort of stuff, you are so much in your own head and thinking
Mm.
about so much what you're doing that you kind of can, because it is such a like when you do comedy, you're up there, you're demanding everyone's attention.
Yeah.
It's very easy to fall into the trap that everyone's thinking about you more than they actually are,
Mm.
and you realize like when you actually step back, you go, oh yeah, no, like that. I get that no one's actually really like, if anything, they don't care at all, let alone dislike.
Yeah, I'll get in my head about the wording of a joke and be like, oh, I stuffed that up and I should have switched that around, or I should have said this word instead of that, or I should have started with that idea before getting there. And no one's thinking like that. And then you get off stage and they're like, oh, I really like that bit. And
Mm.
the audience, I think a polite audience will just think of one nice thing to say, give you a little compliment, but they're not listening to the whole 5 or 10 minutes.
I don't know if I think they're listening, but also I think they don't know how you were expecting it to go.
Mm.
So one of the big lessons I had to learn early on was trying not to talk people out of their good time. Like they come and see me, and they go, "That was really good, man." I'm nah, stuff this and stuff that, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't, because I knew exactly how I wanted to execute. I hadn't done it, so then I'm in my own head going, "That could have been way better." I was stuffed up. I'm down on myself, and then they're like, "No, but I really enjoy." And then you're trying to talk them out of the fact that they enjoyed themselves.
And what's fun for you is not fun for them, and vice versa. So they're just there to have a drink, hang out with their friends, listen to some ideas. You're probably like, I've got this huge grand premise I'm working on, and if I don't get it cooking, I'm going to go home and eat a Mars bar and a chocky milk, and I'm going to be depressed for a week. Where they're just like, I'm at the pub with my friends listening to stand up. This is
Yeah.
great. Like, and also you don't have to be Chappelle every night.
No.
We're doing these little gigs. We don't have to be prolific. We can just have fun.
Well, that's another thing you got to remember is it is all supposed to be fun.
I forget that a lot. Like,
So if I don't know, like I always try and think if I feel like something's getting stale, rather than trying to get too technical with it, trying to go back to just the basic thing. What was it about this that I thought was funny when I first thought of it, and then just sort of reconnect with that, and then you hopefully in the moment, getting that all across.
well, stage one of a joke is the premise, and you come up
Mm.
with a premise because you go, "This is a bit weird," or "This is a bit unusual," or "This is funny." And sometimes I'll just take a premise on stage and it gets a laugh, and I haven't worked out the joke yet. And I sometimes write with a few other comedians and I just pitch them the premise and I already think it's funny. And they're like, yeah, but what's the joke? I'm like, but that's all it needs at this point. And it's getting a laugh on stage. Do I really need to add too much more to it? And then it might muddy it up a bit. I've just been getting up with like some real dumb ideas and sitting in the silence. I've got this new bit that's so dumb where I get up and sort of set it up by saying, I don't want to get too political. We're living in a lot of turmoil. The world is so unstable right now, but I don't think we give enough respect to pockets. And it's the dumbest idea for a joke. And even by setting it up by saying, I don't want to get too political or whatever, it's kind of just that juxtaposition. But I just sit in the silence of saying pockets and then I wait a good 20 seconds for the audience to be like, this guy is an idiot.
Mm.
That's the joke for me.
So where do you go from there?
I do have a bit about how I can walk around all day with half a backpack full of stuff on my person. And that's pretty incredible. I don't need a handbag. I don't need to go to Mimco. I got everything I need on me right now. Like, that's pretty nice.
See, I like that. I'd see what my first instinct is I'm like, keep digging, keep working it out.
Eventually I will. And that's the thing. At the moment, it is that premise. I also like getting up on stage and being a bit hacky, being like, I'm playing the character of the comedian.
Mm.
And to talk about something as mundane as pockets is kind of entertaining to me.
But that can be entertaining. But also, like, I don't know, like, I feel like if you're just stopping at that premise, you're going half speed. If you're going to do that, fucking dig in.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, when they don't laugh, that's where that'd be my invitation to be like, oh, you guys are all about rucksacks, are you?
Well, I think one night they didn't, and I was like, oh, this audience is very anti-pocket. I just sort of dove into that. I've also got a tag about, also, if your hands get a bit chilly, they become your little gloves. Like, that's lovely to have that option if your hands are cold.
The versatility of pockets.
Yeah. These things are amazing, and we're not talking about them. Chicks love pockets. I've noticed there's a female-only room called They Have Pockets, or It's Got Pockets. apparently there's a big trend of women just getting around pockets. I think it's a new thing for them.
I don't think women's clothing has
No, that's
traditionally
right.
had as many
That's it.
pockets.
But I've heard of wedding dresses having pockets and things like
That's
that.
cool.
So chicks are really getting into pockets, but like men have just been utilizing the pocket for a lot, especially your back pockets. You whack that
Yeah.
big wallet in there, it feels nice and secure. I love it. But I got like honestly probably about 15 pockets on me right now, and I can do anything with them. It's exciting, the
That nice.
possibilities.
Yeah, before we come over here, you sat your wallet, keys, and phone over there on the floor.
Yeah. Keeping an eye on them. Just
Yeah,
in case someone comes in and sneaks that $50 I made last night emceeing a shit gig.
So when did you start doing stand up?
I technically started in 2012,
Oh, really?
but I did it for about half a year or 9 months and then quit because I was so bad. I was very young. I was 22, 23,
Okay.
and I was working in radio. Pretty good job, executive producer of a breakfast show.
Oh, nice.
And
What station?
Mix 106.3 Canberra. Yeah.
Nice.
So Canberra technically metropolitan. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty big deal. And I was so young. I was this wonder kid. I knew a lot about the industry and I had a lot of contacts, I guess. So a lot of my job was booking guests,
Mhm.
coming up with segment ideas, keeping the talent happy. And we got smashed hard in the ratings.
Yeah.
We were up against the hit station. They were owned by the same mob, and they had like a heritage station with a heritage breakfast show. Scotty and Nige, these two big old blokes on the youth network.
Bloody Nige.
And they're still around. They're great guys, but we got smashed by them. And I was pretty much threatened if you don't get the ratings up, you're gone. And I'm like, I don't think it's my responsibility.
Mm.
So we took a different approach to the show. We were doing stunts. Like we were doing Kyle and Jackie O content with one producer. I remember when the Olympics was on, it must have been the London Games.
Yep.
Gus Worland would call in every week and do a bit of a rap for us. That was very lovely of him. And then every time Australia won a gold, we would recreate it. So if we won in the kayaking, we had to go kayaking. If we won in the sailing, we'd go sailing. If we won in the swimming relay, we'd have to go put a swim team together of listeners and athletes and recreate these events. And it was so draining and tiring and just doing the logistics and organizing all these things. And I don't think Kyle and Jack could pull that off, let alone a little regional station with a 22-year or 21-year-old producer.
So who are your hosts? What are you dealing with your talent?
Bigsy, Carla Bignaska, Bigsy, who was my roommate.
Yeah.
And she used to host the Hot 30 a long time ago before someone killed a nurse. And she was sort of tapped on the shoulder to be the next big thing, like to take over for Kyle and Jack and things like that. So she's been around for a while, doing radio for a while. And then another guy, Rod, who is now the program director of Canberra FM, he came from like the hot tomato-y vibe. He was a panel operator anchor who worked with another guy they were kind of a big deal, I think, in like Townsville and things like that. So these big radio heads, and I think I just put too much of myself into this job. I wanted to succeed. I also secretly wanted to be on air, so I was given some opportunities and I kind of fumbled them a little bit. And I was just so young and so dumb and full of cum and just needed to sort my life out a bit more. So I moved back to Sydney, enrolled in a university course that had nothing to do with media. I wanted a little break, but with the idea of I would get back into media once I got my liberal arts qualification.
Yeah.
So I did a degree in a Bachelor of Behavioural Science and Counselling and then fell in love with that and the idea of academia in a way because I was a dumb kid and school was not for me and I struggled to get through it. And I luckily got my HSC and whatever it was called at the time. It's not an ATAR, it was something else.
TR?
Nah,
UAI?
UAI.
Yeah.
I got that and luckily I could go to university as a mature age student and I learnt to sort of write and I learnt how to do essays and I learnt how to retain knowledge and information but not be bogged down by too much crap. And I loved that and then sort of started working within mental health and I did some volunteer work with Lifeline and have been able to sort of do that while I've also pursued comedy and media. So I got very lucky that, I always talk about sliding door sort of situations where it's like if I didn't move back to Sydney then like I quit that job and that was my dream job and that was hard. But if I didn't move back to Sydney then I wouldn't have gone to uni and I wouldn't have got some jobs at other radio stations and I wouldn't have got Some of the jobs I've had, and I wouldn't have met some people, and I wouldn't have done stand up again. So I quit stand up for 7 years and got back into it just before COVID.
Good timing.
Did 3 gigs and was like, oh, this is my thing. I found my groove. I was a bit older. I was almost 30-ish, so I felt like I had a bit more life experience. But also uni helped me learn how to be a bit more creative, learn how to write and things like that. So yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do this. So this is my new thing, and then COVID happened. But then during COVID, I sort of saw that lockdown as a chance to be creative, and I had heard these stories about, like, was it the Spanish flu or something else? What was the other big one though?
Spanish flu was 1920 odd.
There was another one that was really bad, and it turned into like a mini renaissance because everyone was just stuck at home being creative.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do. So I was filming little sketches and I was writing, and I was probably working harder than I ever had at comedy during that time because I wasn't doing anything else. I wasn't bogged down with spots. I wasn't really doing a 9 to 5. So I was I put together a half-hour special of skits that I filmed at home, and I think this predates Bo Burnham. So I don't want to say I'm the most prolific comedian going around, because Bo Burnham's special was
Inside, yeah.
unbelievable. And when it came out, a lot of an ex-girlfriend messaged me and said, "I just watched Bo Burnham. This seems like something you would do." And I'm like, "I kind of did, it just wasn't as musical." So I love that time. I love lockdown. I'm not heaps great with people, so even being isolated was fun. But I wanted to use that time productively, and I think I did. And then when I got out of it, I was hitting open mics. Do you remember the first mic you hit after?
Yep.
What was it?
I went in and did a spot at must have been the Iron Duke.
Yeah. What was that room called? So like Jared Keen's?
Yeah, Jared Keen's. And I remember it was their first one back, and I think I'd been in at Fox that day, and I was going on the way home.
So you were still doing a bit of work during lockdown. That's good.
Yeah. We had a bit, for a while. I spent a fair bit of time doing lockdown, like in lockdown. We were still working on stuff, and then once the sport was back and once everything was back, we sort of were back in the office doing some work. But it would
have been an interesting time for media and like television and Foxtel, because everyone's at home. You've got the audience captivated.
It was a crazy time in a way, in that they lost heaps of jobs. There was so many jobs. Like it was horrendous being.
But they also worked out you don't need a crew to put together a TV show. Just go to Skype and Zoom and phone it in.
What was acceptable to go on air changed a lot, in terms of interviews and setups and that sort of stuff.
And they've kept a bit of that even now. There's remnants of
kind of still. I don't like seeing someone being interviewed and I can see up their nose on. Like I'm like, we've known about, like set up your Skype call or whatever. But we've known about framing long enough now, people.
Well, you've got a monitor. You can see yourself. If you're seeing nose hair, maybe just put the camera down a bit.
But it's not even that. There's a control room full of people who can just
go
on the phone. Yeah, hey mate, try doing this. It's not like they call them randomly.
There is someone. I saw these jobs being advertised as like a Zoom technician, where your job is just to do the links. So it'd be like a master controller guy, but their main job was to set up interviews on Zoom.
Yeah.
And that would be their job, to be like, okay, technically your mic's bad, do this, the lighting, hey, frame this up, your schnoz is full.
You get, not everyone's technically. That'd be like depending where you work too. Like you get a job at, say, Sky News, and you're interviewing
some old
academics or politicians, and like trying to explain these people. No.
Well,
no. On the screen, you'll see a little, no, wrong one. Right, to turn the camera back around.
You're
That's
muted.
Facing away from you.
It's funny how we depended so much on video conferencing. Also, Skype shat the bed hard. This was their time to shine, and Zoom snuck in and became the dominant product. But we had so much time to play with these software, and we still are so bad. I do Zoom meetings maybe once every month, and we still have people, oh no, your camera's off, your mic's off, I can't get in on the call. I'm like, we've been doing this for years. What's going on? But I pretty much got a job because of those old academics or politicians, because I snuck back into radio by panel operating old men who didn't know how to use the equipment.
How good.
But there is a bit of a saying in radio, if you know how to use the equipment, they'll ask more of you. And a lot of people go, I don't want to work weekends.
Yeah.
And if you know how to panel, they'll make you work a weekend. So I was very lucky to work with some really great broadcasters and even be mentored by them and do, I guess, an unofficial apprenticeship at a station where I was just in control of the studio and have, great guests coming through, great broadcasters. And I got to work, with footy commentators, but then also conservative talkback hosts, and it was very different to the FM commercial breakfast show.
Mm.
And it sort of showed me that radio can be simple and it can be fun. You don't have to be a dickhead or a goose, or you don't have to do stunts. People like conversations. People like the news. People like the weather and the time.
There's that sometimes I think that like some approaches to commercial radio like that, like when you see that approach, it's almost like they're terrified they're going to lose their audience's attention. So
Yeah.
they're just doing as much. It's like if you keep making as much noise and loud and like, yeah, over here, over here, over here, over here,
Yeah.
then they won't look away.
Mm.
But then you realize the highest rating stuff is all the talkback stuff, which is sort of you're going for a different demographic, but that demographic are looking for something completely different out of their radio listening experience to the other end of it, the sort of the real look here, we need to do stunts, we need
Well,
to
it's so
get your
simple. Like,
attention.
there's really no budget for AM radio. It's just they put all their money into a host, and then that host has to be engaging. They have to be informative. They have to be opinionated, and that's where the entertainment comes from. If you're waking up in the morning and you know what's going on in the world, plus you get to hear someone's crazy opinion, that's all you really need. I don't need someone ringing up going, oh yeah, I lost my kid and I need $500,000 for a renovation and we haven't been on a holiday for 10 years. Like, and that's what FM seem to be doing now. Whenever there's a competition on the radio, I turn off because it's like, this doesn't include me. If I'm
It's an
not
interesting
listening to
take.
I don't want to listen to someone else win money.
Yeah.
I want to win money. But that's why I do listen to a lot of AM, because it's like, yeah, let's hear what Ben Fordham's talking about this morning. And he's not super opinionated compared to his predecessor, but
But you realise too that I think sometimes I wonder how much they actually care or think about what they think exactly agree with the stuff they're saying, or how much of it's like, because going on with a reasonable, well, you could look at it this way, you could look at it that way. That doesn't
no.
light up the text line or light up the
Yeah.
callback line, which is where the next, like you throw out a premise for something and lay your marker down, then you hear it like Matty White's graded it on SEN. He'll go in, talk about all this, this, and this, and go, I think this, and he'll lay down, and not that he goes courts controversy, but he lays down an opinion about something that's going on in sport.
One-sided?
No, not
Because
completely
he seems
one-sided.
quite balanced.
He's very balanced, but he'll put a position down. I maybe think this, but people ring in to disagree, or they ring in to go, mate, a lot of people have said this, or he'll say, I've heard this, but I think this, and so people can pick a side and ring in and debate it. Because if you're just going down the middle trying to be the moderator, what do you guys think? No one's going to call in with what they think. They've got to either agree or disagree.
And I think a lot of famous Australian AM shock jocks probably didn't believe what they were saying, but also played the character. I mean, even if you look at some of their personal lives, it probably conflicts with some of their views and opinions on air. So I, think about a conservative radio host that was allegedly gay, and he was against like same-sex marriage, and it's like, how can you say these things? Like, also, how can you not be true to yourself? And that's why we're so lucky with stand-up. We can be so true to ourselves. We can still be opinionated, but it's always coming from within. Like, if you are changing your act to appeal or to get callers or whatever, like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I guess we're lucky that we were allowed to be genuine.
Well, that's the thing. I think the good hosts, like your Matty Whites, like Matty White throws out his take on stuff, and it's not but he's also willing to be engaged by the listener to be have his mind changed and that sort of stuff. But you can't just throw it down the middle, or you need to go, well, maybe it should be seen this way, and throw out one way of looking at it for people to either agree or disagree with to come back. And and I don't like, when it's done well, it's someone who it sounds like they've considered this and this is their considered opinion, rather than mate, he's just coming up with a hot take to light the lines up. Like, and which is kind of, that's an approach and that gets lots of engagement. But
I don't want to keep going on about colleagues of yours, but
yeah.
Vossi went really hard on an AFL coach that quit.
Did he?
And sort of said, hey, I'm here, I'm at work, I'm putting in the hours. Why isn't this bloke? And this bloke was going through a bit. He did leave, I think, on mental health grounds. And I'm not sure if that coach has gotten a new job or whatever, but he finished up on terms. And Vossi went real hard. And I don't think that was Vossi's opinion. I don't want to speak for Vossi. I don't think he really thought that. Because I'm sure Vossi's been through times, and Vossi has been through times where work has been hard and you probably want to quit and you need to think about your options. But I think he was trying to get the text line to light up.
Yeah, I know. Look, sometimes too, I think it's important. Like, I don't know, like it's hard. I think in media these days, like you look back, like late night shows in the 90s and that sort of stuff. Anything that happened in the public sphere was fodder. Like it wasn't. There was never a thought given to Hugh Grant's mental health when he got caught.
This is my favorite
with a prostitute.
story.
You know what I mean? Like
I heard it.
It was just fodder for all the thing, and everyone made fun. Like,
have you had Freddie McManus on this podcast?
Yes.
He told the story, like he explained the story to Chloe Madron on her podcast recently about what happened to him.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite late night stories because this turned things around for Jay Leno. His ratings were awful.
Yeah.
He was going up against Letterman, who just left NBC to go to CBS. Also, this would be my like specialty subject on a quiz show or hard quiz or something like that. 90s late night television and like from 92 to sort of whenever when there was a big shake-up with Letterman finishing up and that opened the door for Conan. Leno went into 11:30 on NBC, but then also like Craig Kilborn came out of nowhere and took over for like Tom Schneider. And it was a crazy time. There's a lot of books about it. There's a great film called The Late Shift, which I watch like every week, just about Letterman trying to get the Tonight Show. Really great.
Oh, really?
It's based on a book written by a TV critic.
Which I've read that book and I read the
Conan
the
one
second
as well.
one.
It's funny it happened twice.
Yeah, I know.
And like I don't want to piss on Jay Leno because I think he's actually a pretty decent guy. But how did it happen twice in such a similar way?
Because the opportunity was there, and I
but who needs that much cash? Who needs to be on TV that often?
No one. Like realistically, none of them need that much cash. You could do that for, like realistically, I mean, you could do that for 3 years and retire.
And because he was getting like 30 million a year,
yeah, for a lifestyle that you.
But Carson set this predecessor, like where he did it for 30 years, so everyone wanted to try and match that. And like Letterman kind of did it for 30 years. I think Leno kind of did. Conan's got up there.
You hear Letterman talk now as I think he thinks he went for too long.
I disagree. And like the work he's doing now is so good. And he's gone back to that sort of Tom Schneider style show, the one-on-ones. And I think that's his true passion. It's funny that he was a stand-up. I know, but he said it was very different. He would do colleges and you didn't need an act. You could get up with 10 and just do a bit of crowd work or whatever. But
whereas Jay Leno is
he's still had he's got the same act because he's never done a special. So he thinks if he films it, he'll lose his income. And again, the guy's got so much cash.
It's crazy.
But yeah, Letterman definitely. Have you heard of the concept of like the anti-talk show that like Letterman sort of did the opposite of Carson, where he kind of hated the guest and the audience was in on the joke, and then when he went to 11:30, he had to sort of change his act a little bit, which is so funny. You move an hour earlier and you've got like this different audience.
Yeah,
there's a point in the film where he's campaigning for 11:30. And he goes, I can book guests where they mix the country music with the rock. And I think, is that going to win you the ratings?
Yeah.
You know, having a musical guest that plays music that appeals to middle America.
But it's, I don't know, it's hard because like you look at all that, like, because the creative part of you that wants to get into that goes, you want to get in there to be creative and perform and get to an audience. But then it's very quick once the business side of it kicks in. It's very easy for all of a sudden to go from thinking, what am I doing creatively to entertain, putting out into the world, hoping people are entertained, as opposed to looking at the audience and going, what will entertain? What can I do that will entertain this group of people? How do I like it's a slightly different thing, which I
Mhm.
think if you're not careful, you can lose
For
yourself
sure.
in.
And I think Letterman stayed pretty true to himself even when he went to
Mm,
11:30. He had Paul Schaefer as his band leader, who was the hippest guy in music, like wrote some of the best songs and put together the most dangerous band in late night. And it was so hip and funky and cool. And he kind of kept with that. And even though he had to maybe clean up his act a little bit and be nicer to guests, he would still put in alternative bands as
mm,
musical guests. He would put in stand ups where Leno and a few other people sort of pulled back on having stand-ups on as guests. And I wonder if that was because he didn't want to compete with anyone.
yeah.
Because remember, that's how Leno got his start. Would have been doing five on Carson and then
Yep.
guest hosting. And Leno never had a guest host. I think
Well,
Katie Couric filled in once.
Leno famously was used to be a guest on Letterman.
Exactly, yeah.
Letterman's
And they
first.
touch on that in the book a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but I forget how we got there. Um,
You were talking about this late night in the 90s, and it
oh
used to
yeah, no,
be.
but like that sort of in terms of the mental health aspect now, like society's standards for how, who and what you can make fun of, like in terms of a hot take, which is where I think it's going to be interesting when in 30 years time to hear what talkback radio has become, because all those guys, the older will have gone,
Hmm.
and I think there'll still be, whether it's, I don't know, I say talkback radio in terms of talkback radio in less over the Broadway, more over the broadcast means that we've got now over radio waves, as opposed to maybe over the internet or
Yeah.
whatever replaces it looks like. Um, whether it's going to be that same style, because I don't think that sensibility will be the same.
It will be an imitation of what it used to be. I think what will happen is Kyle Sandilands will want to do a talkback show. I think people like even like Tim Blackers will want to do one. And because they've got tenure, they'll get opportunities, whether it's at an AM station or whether it's on the internet or even. I'm surprised Kyle and Jack, when they moved to Kiss, they didn't get rid of the music and go,
Mm.
hey, we're just going to do a Howard Stern style show. Because that's sort of what I think Kyle wants to do. I think he just wants to take calls. And why not give it to him? But I guess money, it's all money, and they're making so much cash off that show. I guess they want to try and keep it very Hollywood and very, what's that guy's name? Seacresty. Because that's
Yeah,
what I guess the show's kind of based on.
but yeah, and the thing is that is also like, okay, this is working, this is
Mm.
making a lot of money. Then that drive for change, where you got to get creative when you're in Canberra, was because you needed to win the ratings, not defend the ratings.
Well, we actually were told to take it easy. We were being too creative, we were told. And we stripped it back and we were doing basic talk breaks, news a lot more frequently,
Mm.
phoners, like basic phoners rather than like big stunts. And I wasn't enjoying it as much. As
Yeah.
much as I was overworked and doing all these crazy things to make the show grand, when we were doing the basics, I didn't enjoy that. Because I'm taking calls, oh yeah, put you through, blah, blah, blah. And when I moved back to Sydney, I got a job as a panel operator. And that was more fun for me because, okay, I don't have to really worry about the content. I
Mm.
just worry about the technical side. I get to listen to the show, but I get to sort of have my input here and there. I get to drive the ship as well. And I think as a comic, you have like, we're all control freaks, yeah. So to have that power, and then there's also that clear pathway of like, okay, I know how to panel now. Can I maybe sneak on air? I know how to turn a microphone on, and I'm already in front of a microphone. Just let me have a show, mate.
Yeah.
So in Canberra, I was offered to like fill in and do the show and anchor the show, and I didn't know how to panel.
Mm.
So that was one of my goals. Is like I'm going to learn how to panel because when these opportunities come up, I want to be able to take them up on their offers. And it's funny, when I was so young, I got all these offers to do it. And now that I'm older and more experienced and have all these skills and I'm keen to jump on air, the phone's not ringing.
But I mean, it's like anything. I think those opportunities come when you're young. One, because you're around,
Hmm.
like because
And
people.
it wasn't as competitive. You know,
Well, I think
I
that's
was like the only person producing. Like now there's a million producers, there's a million people that can panel, there's a million people that can edit. I mean, if you've got an iPhone, you can pretty much run a television network. So every young person knows how to do these techie things. Where back in the day, I was like a rare
mm,
anomaly. I knew how to do some stuff. I knew how to produce a show. I knew how to do the tech stuff. I knew how to book a guest. Not many people knew how to do it back then, but
Yeah.
now everyone can.
Yeah, which is, I mean, and I noticed that at Fox when we get the like young graduates come through, maybe do work experience or whatever. We notice like they can all cut, they
Yeah.
can all shoot, they can all do basic stuff that were specialties, but
Yeah.
it's now it's much different. And
Oh,
I mean, it's not to say those specialties um, aren't all still like you need though. Like you cannot beat a good editor
that's right.
to
Yeah.
do stuff and turn stuff around quickly and properly and make it all look good.
So,
But
social media is definitely the blame for that. There's these jobs that's like social media managers and stuff like that, and you need to know how to do everything across all platforms. I've recently put some content out there. I used to be very protective of my material and stuff, but I've started to try and grow a bit of an audience because I want to kind of do this as a job one day. And I just got a young open micer editing my videos. I'll send him maybe 3 or 4 clips a week with a rough idea. And he did the same TAFE course I did when I was 17
oh really?
and at North Sydney. It was called North Sydney Institute of something or other, and
Is that the one at
St Leonard's.
St. Len, just near Artarmon? Like
Yeah, near
yeah,
near the hospital there. And
mm,
they just when we started, they just got new studios. It was like $6 million magical studios. We used to like be able to just record and do whatever we wanted. He did the same course a few years ago, and it's very condensed now. It took me a year to do a certificate for. Now you can do a diploma in like 6 months.
wow.
But we were in there every day building sets, filming sketches, all this sort of stuff, doing all this theory, doing all this practical. He did the same course. Everyone in my class has gone on to do pretty good things in the business. He can't get a job. And he's editing my videos, doing like captioning and doing edits, and they look incredible. And I'm so lucky I've got him because I can't do
Mm,
that. Like I know I've done the same course he's done, but things are moving so rapidly I can't keep up. I could edit a feature film, but I'm not going to be able to do all the effects and all the titles and all that stuff. I'd
yeah.
have to get someone in to clean that up. But I do love the technical side of things, and I think I've got that sort of brain. And I think a lot of comedians do, where we're very practical, so we can make things happen, but we also have that creative element as well, and both of them combined is pretty lethal. And it's also fun, just so fun. Like we have mates that are so talented, and you
Mm.
can be like, "Hey, I'm going to film a sketch. Want to come over?" And it's like really enjoyable to do stuff like that. I'm a bit down sometimes because a lot of the class I came up with, like the school I came up with in stand up, have like either moved on, they're either overseas, they might have broken and got a bit too big for me, or they've quit. And it's hard to find like people to collaborate with.
Yeah, but that's just the phase you're in like in the career. But you'll find too, like the longer you go, the less that matters as much.
Well, I've
Like
noticed that as well. A lot of the bigger dogs are keen to do stuff with me. Whether it's like, hey, let's go to Newcastle for a weekend and put on a show, or let's write a sitcom. I
mm,
think there's some people who are a few years above me who are way bigger and better who want to do stuff. And it's sort of like me with the open micer. They go, oh, Tim might be able to help me out with an edit, or like we can
yeah,
mutually benefit from one another.
but it's also I think too like I was talking to someone about this recently. Who was I think Kappa. We were talking on this. Nick Kappa
Nick
and I were
Kappa.
talking about how it's literally people when you start. Like when you start, everyone like people all starting together are nice to each other. There's a point in the middle where there's some people get competitive and it can be a bit
Yeah.
bitchy and whatever. But then once people are comfortable with themselves and where they're at and how they're going, everyone just becomes like so. You get someone who's got a like in terms of what you'd call the big dogs.
Yeah.
Like they're usually like in my experience the most helpful people because they don't.
And the nicest
Yeah,
and no ego, and it's a bit full on or surreal sometimes when they are like that because you are starstruck, and then they're like, why is he giving me a tag?
yeah. But that's the thing. The ego in that middle part is an insecure. It's more about insecurity rather
I
than
always thought it was
anything
because
else.
they knew they were being watched, and they do have a name and they don't want to tarnish it, but I think it's not that. I think it's just says they're nice. There's a group of people, comedians, that are in the middle who are the rudest, most disrespectful people I know that don't give anything back to the community. And you look at the big dogs who do so much, and you're like, There's a reason why they're big dogs
Mm.
because they're pleasant.
Yeah, but there's two things I'd say to that. Is one is yes, that's like the best advice anyone can ever give a comedian starting out or whatever, especially in Australia where the industry's not that big. Is you got to be really, really good to be an asshole.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
need to be, you
I
need to
hope to be
be
that good one
next.
day. Because
Yeah,
I'm already an arsehole, I just got to get
yeah.
good.
You need to be next level good. Like if you're easy to work with and pleasant, that's half the battle. Like
Mm.
to get on to like for me, like working with people, half the thing is now there's just a good enough. And then once they're good enough, then it's just how pleasant are they to be with backstage? Because most of the show,
You're hanging.
you're hanging, you're not
That's
on
I've heard
stage.
this story so many times where it's like I don't even want a crusher as my opener. I just want a good hang.
Mm.
And I think I've gotten opportunities because sometimes I'm pleasant and sometimes I'm a good hang, and sometimes people just want to go,
Mate,
"Oh, Tim can come
can
and be in the green room."
first question is can they do the job?
Mm,
If they can do the job, are they a good hang?
yeah,
Because once you clear that bar, there's heaps of people who can clear that bar. Then there's the next is can you just be pleasant?
I wish in Australia we had more of the road gig vibe.
Mm.
Because in America, you go on the road with an opener and a middle and a headliner, and that would just be the funnest thing to do. Especially, you could do it even in Australia with like an RSL tour with three people. You just drive around Australia, you do a gig every night. But I just think the going to staying at hotels and all that sort of stuff. I listen to a lot of American podcasts, and that's all they talk about. And they name drop these openers that no one's ever heard of. And like, this
Mm.
guy's such a good guy. We did this, we did that. And it sounds like they're on holiday. They go and do these tourist things. They go on roller coasters in um, supermarkets or what, in America, they've got all those crazy
Mm.
things. And it just seems like so much fun. But they also get to see their country, they get to see the world. Like, I've not gotten to see much of Australia. It'd be great to be on the road and get to do and experience all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean that all comes to like I've been lucky in that I've got to do a bit of touring with people. I got to like you get weird gigs too. I've gone to Darwin a couple of times for gig. Like I went to Darwin for a gig a couple of years ago, and then the same people that same organisation that ran that gig took me to PNG,
Oh wow!
Papua New Guinea just recently, and then I've like do things like it's I one of the one of my favourite people to work with is Tahir because he's just so happy and fun.
Yeah.
And one of him talking to me a while ago about like the way he chooses what he will and won't do in his career is he said part of it's like okay is do I want to do it like as a creative thing, but two he goes I look and I go does that sound like it'd be fun to do? Does that sound like it'd be a fun
Mm.
experience? And so he'll tip me into some of these gigs. Oh, Barney, I went and did this gig. I've told them to, I've told him you should be next to do it because it was really fun and he just enjoys life. And that's
Mm.
sort of if you can enjoy. There are all these weird experiences where you get to go out. Like don't get me wrong, you're still doing weird gigs here and there, but there are gigs that'll come along that you're just like, oh, this is like I was like going to Papua New Guinea
Yeah.
to do a gig over there, and I was just looking around going,
Yeah.
this is crazy. This is so good.
I,
No one gets to visit here.
it's so interesting with Australian comedians. Often the dream is London or America, and I think it's just to find a bigger audience most of the time. It's not
Mm,
because Australia's bad. It's just we don't have a national scene.
mm,
So America does. You can like James McCann, for example, is headlining at comedy clubs across America, and he couldn't do that in Australia because we only got a couple of states. Where in
mm.
America they got a few more. So it's cool to see people like that. Even Sam Campbell in London making a huge name for himself and becoming more of this sort of international star, which he deserves to be because he's the fucking best comedian in the world. So there's opportunities, but I also like going to Newcastle. I like coming down south and doing it. Like I'll stay. I went to Melbourne for the first time recently, and I'm like, I've got to do that once a year because that's
Yeah,
just so much fun. And as you say, you find out what's good and what's bad, and you go back to the good ones.
yeah. You'll enjoy. Like you gotta. I don't know. There's something to be said for enjoying the process.
But I would like to be just chucked in the deep end and go, hey, you're doing a national tour of, shitty clubs or RSLs or whatever. You can take two mates. You're going to stay in a crap motel and share a bed every night. And you just get, an audience of 50 people at a pub club or RSL and just, do the opener, the middle, the headliner. And I think that would be super enjoyable, and I don't think anyone's kind of done it in Australia.
There's a few guys that do that sort of, like Laugh Mob were doing that for a while.
Oh
Those
yeah,
guys
and they've
were
got a
getting out in
big
the
following
road.
in Perth, so they probably did the Perth stuff a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's everything you can, like, every sort of thing you can think of. Everyone, like, there's people that have tried it and done it, and it's just, to be honest, all the stuff is what you want to get out of it. If you want to get out of that the experience of doing that, and you're willing to risk a bit of money, and
Yeah.
it's all doable.
I like trying things once as well, and in Australia we seem to be heavily invested in festival shows, so I'll give that a go as well. And I mean, if it doesn't work, and probabilities are I won't do great at Melbourne, but I'll give it a go just to say I've done it. Then you go, oh fuck it, I don't need to do festival shows. I can just rent a room in a club or a pub and put on my own show, because when you do a festival show, most of the time you're the one selling the tickets. It's not the promoter, it's not the festival. Like, you've got to do it anyway. So why do they get a cut? Rent a room.
There is, so depending on the festival, and look, all the festivals have their own brand. So once you go into the Melbourne Comedy Festival thing, there's people that come out and they'll just pick something out of the festival guide to go see.
Yeah.
You're a chance of being there. And there's a lot of people that come out and they'll go, I'm going to see 2 shows this year.
Yeah.
And they'll go see a favourite that they know, and they'll go see someone they didn't know. And so that's the joy of that. Whether that model's working as well as it used to. Like, Melbourne's a very big festival. Like, you 500 different shows on. So the number of people, even if there's lots and lots of people doing that, you're 1/500th of the thing. So you got to adjust to that, adjust your expectations to that. And I think that model's changing a little. That business model's changing a little, just because the way people engage with comedy at the moment has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And it's not to say that anything bad or worse. It's just like, now there's a lot of people that are building their own following online. We've had this wave of people that have been able to build their own following online outside those models. And so the people that were doing well in the last few years at those festivals have that built-in audience already. They haven't built it through the festival as much. But then you see guys like, say, Heggie or Dan Connell, who they built their audience at Melbourne. They do sell really well in the festivals, but they built it over 10, 12 years.
Yeah. Well, even look at Campbell. Like, he won the Barry, he won the Edinburgh Dave Award, so he went through the festivals, but now he can just go grab the Enmore Theatre for a few nights and do it himself, or do it through his management. And but he'll still pop into festivals, and he might have some sort of admiration for it. And he's definitely a festival show kind of guy. Like, he was putting out the hour, and there's a few guys that are following that, like, especially in his school, like the Chens and the Raths and those sort of guys. So I just don't think a festival will work for me. I've seen people go the other way, like Goxie goes the other way, who sort of will just rent a pub out for the night and do it his own, because he loves going regional, and festivals don't really allow for that, or even some management companies don't allow for that. But then I see people like Neil, but also is it the 2 guys, Luke Kidgel and Lewis Spears? Like, they're just huge on social media, where they just go, I'm doing a trial show in a basement, and they'll get 300 people rock up because they've got such a big draw.
So it's the double-edged sword of there's no rules about the way you have to do it.
Yeah.
In terms of, you can work out how to do it that works for you, but the other side of that sword is, you have to work out how it works for you. There's no, because there is no, like, it's not like here's the entry level comedian job, and 6 months, if you pass your comedian exam, you'll be promoted to senior comedian, and then, like, it's.
But it kind of unofficially does work like that. You go, okay, you do open mics for a year, and then you might get a booked gig, and then you might get a paid MC gig, and then you might get the store, and then you might do a festival show. There is a bit of a pathway, but you can do your own thing.
There is that pathway, but that pathway, I don't know, that pathway is not as set in stone as it used to be. And there's always been, like, people that pass through or pass around steps. And
well, Heggie, like what was his 3rd gig? Was the Raw final, the national final. But then he's gone on to do a fresh hour every year. Like, it's just incredible. Ronnie Chang also did like comedy for 5 years before getting on the telly and doing Daily Show and all that sort of stuff. So people do just...
Ronnie was the runner-up to Heggie in that.
Yeah,
time.
how crazy is that? Yeah. It's interesting. I always think about Saturday Night Live and like the people that didn't get on that go on to be bigger than some of the people. It's hard to pick talent and to know.
Well, it's not just talent. Like at a certain level, everyone's like in terms of like splitting the difference between say Ronnie and Heggie, like they're both like I wouldn't say one's more talented than the other. They've got very different skills and wanted different things out of it. So
different audiences as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And Ronnie's become like an international superstar. He's in like what Marvel movies. Like, that's insane. That some guy that was doing stand up at probably shitty clubs with us is in feature films playing a jacked superhero.
Yeah.
Where Heggie, I think, and you know, Heggie might want to be in a Marvel film. I'm not sure what he's into. But when I see him putting out a new hour every year, and up until recently was still on the tools, I just see like that, like, you know, his bank balance is probably different than Ronnie's, but to me, that is the ideal comedian.
Yeah, it's where he, like, I think they both have gone the path they wanted to go.
Yeah,
which is the goal. Like, I don't know, like, it's that thing of measuring yourself up against what you're trying to measure your success up against. Like, I don't know. For me, if I'm getting away, like, if I can, man, I want like pay the bills. If you can pay the bills with just bullshit you made up,
yeah, it's pretty
you
crazy.
know what I mean? Like, I got flown internationally recently to go talk to some people with bullshit I made up.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like at the time you're in it, and then there's that surreal feeling where you're just like, holy shit, that just happened. And all it's based on is I noticed some shit and talked about it.
There are other jobs that are quite lucrative where people just make things up, whether it's like people in advertising. I always think that's like quite a creative job, but you're selling your soul in a way. Comedy is so pure.
Mate, advertising is, I know a couple of people that work in it. One of my good mates is quite high level in advertising, and they work so fucking hard, and your creativity is serving so many different masters and having to go through so many different funnels that the joy of this is your creativity gets put straight to the audience and their reactions.
And potentially the same amount of money, or if not more, can be made through stand-up, which is crazy to be like, as you say, these are just silly ideas I've had. I'm getting up on stage, I'm trying to make people laugh, and I could potentially make a really good amount of money if you get real good. But I don't think many comics get in it for the money.
No, you'd be an idiot if you did.
I think I get into it to be heard, to be seen, to have attention. I think that's like we definitely have this little ego, and a lot of comics, I reckon, have been neglected by people or their parents and things like that. And you hear it in their act. And it was exciting for me the other night. I did the store for the first time, which was a pretty big deal. It was definitely one of my goals that I wanted to sort of tick off along the way, whatever you call this comedy career of mine. And my parents came and saw me for the first time, and it was kind of the first time I felt sort of proud of something. And I got 5 minutes at the fucking store, and I was really bummed about that because I wanted a bit more time. And there was someone who was on before me who was a lot greener than I, and they got way longer. And I was like, that annoyed me. I should just be happy for the opportunity.
You can't look around. You just got to control this space in front of you.
I begged them, can I have 1 more minute? Because I wanted to open with a bomb, and I knew it would set me back a minute or so. And there was no one there from like management. So the lighting guy goes, just run the line. Like, don't worry about it, man. So I got up and opened with this really hacky bit that I just wanted to be like, that was my first joke at the store. But I mean, it was so fun. My parents came, and my mum said afterwards, do you think you could do this full time? Like, do you think you could do this as a job? And I was like, I got paid $70 tonight, and parking was 30. So probably not.
Oh, you should have validated.
I normally park up that sneaky street.
No, you got to validate. You get it for $7.
That machine never works.
No, now it's put your rego in.
Yeah.
They change the system so you can validate and you'll be right. It's $7, mate. You've done yourself out of out of $30, right? Well, $23.
I mean, I got a few free drinks and some advice from some big dogs, so it all. It's tax deductible.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I mean, you gotta like. I always say, unless you're this whole thing is it's a process,
Mm.
and unless you enjoy the process, then
Oh,
there's no
I've
or
loved
find a way to suck fulfillment out of the process.
I still do open mics. I
Yeah.
still get up if I can 3 times a night, and that's because I enjoy it so much and I want to be around it. The other night I was at Laughing at Newtown, and it's a pretty shit open mic, late night Wednesday, and there was a room runner there who said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just getting a spot." And they're like, "Why?" And I felt like saying to them, because they're a bit of a hack, I felt like going, "Mate, so I don't end up like you." Like
Jesus.
I'm flexing my muscles. I'm trying
Hopefully
to
they
get.
watch this.
And honestly, it's like I don't want to get. Well, I want to get good, or I want to stay the same. I want to maintain whatever gift or skills I have. And if I'm not getting up, I'm getting worse. So it's crazy when people get to a point where they're not doing open mics or they're not doing as many spots. But what happens, I generally see, is the store becomes your open mic. I see people like Cam Knight, who has been doing comedy, 30 years, who's an absolute crusher. He'll get up at the store and do a premise that I would probably take to an open mic first. And that's just because he's there, I'm here. And I would like to get to that point where I can do that.
There's a certain point too where you, after this, like, experience of time, you get much better at knowing.
Your writing gets better as well.
Yeah,
you know it's going to work.
Yeah, you get much better at just knowing.
Or you have little
losing the stuff
skills to get through a bomb or a new bit that doesn't really work.
Mm.
And I've always had this, I've always asked people this question, like comedians that have been doing it for a while. What do you do when you bomb? Like, do you lean into it? Do you acknowledge it? I do hate people that sort of go, well, that one's getting the card, or I won't be doing that one again. I'll retire that one. There's like little go-to things that you can do. I sometimes double down.
I don't.
Is this the dumbest fucking audience in the world? Do you not understand what I'm trying to do up here?
See, but it also depends where you are and what's going on. Like, I'm trying to think about, like, if you're at a corporate and it's just not going well, or there's, I had a gig a little while ago. It was like at a presentation night for this soccer association, and it was just, it is a booking that should never have happened, but it was like, they were like, oh, it's MA 15 plus, there'll be, maybe the 17 kids from 17 and to adults, so mostly a grown-up audience. Get there, it's the association presentation night. There's like a couple of old, the old dignitaries from the association. There's politicians. Then there's just a table of 16-year-old girls, a table of 17-year-old girls, table of 18-year-old girls. Then over this side, table of 16-year-old boys. I'm like, there's nothing funny that all these people are coming together on, especially not that you can't do comedy for that range of people, but when you've got a table of 16-year-old boys that are all teammates and a table of 16, they're having their own night. They didn't come here for comedy. They didn't know comedy was going to happen.
Yeah.
They've just been told to listen to this guy for a bit, and then, so it was the wrong and so that in that instance, like, I have never changed gears so much halfway, because like you do something and it'll work a bit and it'll start to work for this mob, but then you needed to be on top of them. You couldn't go deep. Like, they wouldn't go 3 and 4 jokes into a premise. You had to go boom, boom, in and out. Now we're talking about this. And it was really hard. But then at that point, like, there's no point blaming them. It's not their fault. They didn't ask for you to be there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're not. So that's what I mean, like, in terms of, it depends where you are, how reacting to the bomb. And then I just acknowledge we all know this wasn't going to go well. I'm like, I'm going to let you get back to your night.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with this. And so sort of did my time and you just sort of make the best of it that you can in those.
And I think sometimes if you can't get laughs, you've just got to think, because our thing is like, all right, I'll pull out the gold material, I'll try and win them over. But also, as you said, they weren't there for comedy. Can you just make it fun and enjoyable? Do you have to crush? Can you just do some warm, light crowd work and sort of be like, what's going on with you guys tonight? So there's things that you probably learn along the way that you can pull out. And you've been doing comedy for ages. And it's funny to hear you say that story, because I was talking to Mick Meredith the other night.
Oh, yeah.
And we were kind of saying, like, who's the most universal comedian? We both agreed it's you. Because you can get up and crush in front of everyone, and you do such great slice of life stuff that most people can relate to it.
See, I would have gone with my favourite person there is, this is the way I do it. And Mick Meredith's up there for me with the guy I can throw in any room. But I always talk about the comedian that if I go, I've kidnapped your family, I'm going to kill them unless there's a group of people in that room, you don't get to know anything about them.
Yeah, and
It's
a
just
mixture of people,
a
like
room full
all
of people.
different ages,
Yeah,
genders.
you don't get, no, you don't even get to know that.
Yeah.
You just get to pick one comic who's going to go in there and make them laugh. Who are you picking? And that's what, for me, that's like Mickey D.
Yeah.
Who's, I don't know if you know Mickey,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's just amazing, bulletproof. But there are guys like that, and that's a big compliment. Thank you for that.
No. Well, we both, and we were even saying, what's the most universal topic, and it's like dogs. If you've got some good gear on dogs, you'll crush in any room.
People like dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it was, that gig was, it was fine. It was what it was. But I think you just learn too with experience not to, like, there would have been a time where I would have walked away from that gig just being like, mate, this is.
I would still do that a bit. Well, I'm getting better. But I did a gig the other night in Glebe. It was an open mic. I had done 2 other gigs that night, and I just came to try some new material. And I got up and I saw a few acts before me, and they were like real rough open micers, and they were getting laughs, and it was a warm audience. So I'm like, oh great, I'll get up and do my new stuff, and hopefully some stuff sticks to the wall. And I got up and I just wasn't getting them at all. And I just stopped, and I felt bad for doing this, but I have seen other comedians do it, and it has been funny, where it's kind of like, by the way, guys, just letting you know, like, I am pretty good. And I even said, I've been watching out the back, and there's a few acts before me, not great, and you guys were laughing at them. So either there's something wrong with me.
You don't mind rolling the other acts under the bus?
They know where they're at. So I'm like, either there's something really wrong with me or there's something wrong with you. And then I actually won them back after sort of dissing them a bit.
But I think sometimes it's the releasing the tension,
Yeah,
of acknowledging. If you can't, like,
I could feel them loosen up once I said that, because maybe they were just like, all right, what you're talking about doesn't really make sense to us now, but now that you've introduced yourself to us and we kind of understand what sort of guy or person you are, all right, we're on board with you. We can now relax and laugh.
My like, the other thing is I think more than anything, they just want to trust you. The audience just want to trust that it's they don't know if it's going exactly how you planned it.
Yeah, true.
But they just want to know that you've got it under control, because that's if they start, and most audiences, like when you're bombing, it's not that they start hating you, it's they start to feel nervous or empathetic for you that it's not going very well. And once they're nervous for you, you can't laugh nervous. Like, there is a nervous laugh, but that's not the one you want.
But that's sort of why I sometimes open with a bomb, to show them I'm in control and I don't care, and there's nothing to worry about. We're all just going to have fun. We're here for a bit of a laugh. Don't worry about it. I'm all fun and games. Like, it's not going to be the most prolific killer set, but I've got a few puns that you might like. I've got a few dick jokes you might like.
What I'd suggest to you, your next challenge is open with your best crush.
Everyone tells me to do that, and my best joke is a trans joke, so I feel awkward opening with it. But it's a good joke. And I'm worried, because Louis C.K. says the same thing: open with your best and then build from that. I worry I can't top that joke.
But that's
the challenge.
That's the actual deep end.
Yeah.
Opening in a hole and digging yourself out is starting at the bottom, and no matter where you end up, you're better than where you started.
Yeah.
The real challenge is starting as strong as you can and trying to maintain, even if you just maintain it.
Yeah, my biggest thing is, like, how do I close after I've opened with my best? Then what do I close with? My worst joke.
Don't worry about it.
Just see where I go.
You'll get there.
I will. I'll try it, and I'll let you know how I go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna message you. I fucking hate shit.
Yeah, I know, but that's also part of the fun. Is like that's like, I'd suggest that's more challenging. Than opening.
No, opening with a bomb is not challenging. It's very fun. It's like, and honestly, it works every time.
Once you can get open with, like, the best thing you've got, and really challenge yourself to hold on, even if it's just hold on to that ride. And then there'll be times where you almost get them. Like, it'll become like playing a video game where you're getting through and you're almost getting to the end of the game, and then you're fucked, and then you start again. Yeah, mate. But that's the fun of comedy.
Do you do it? Do you open with your best sometimes?
Sometimes it's like I mix up what I've been what I open with. I've been doing some newer stuff this week, because I tend to get into a thing where I'm opening with this, closing with this, and the middle mixes up for quite a while. But at the moment, I've been doing a lot of writing and putting some new stuff in.
Great.
So now I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do the new stuff here, then I don't have time to open with this and open with that. And sometimes too, I get sick of opening with the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
So, but depending on the audience, sometimes if it calls for it, I've got a pretty universal joke that that's an easy sort of way to just ground in the room.
Yeah.
Get into a short gag. And so I didn't do that. I'd been doing the store run this week, and I didn't do that for the first night. But then the second night, something had happened in the crowd that just led me into that bit, and I was like, boom, this is straight away. And then same last night. So it's sort of just, I'll decide, like I've got a rough idea, but sometimes I'll decide how I'm going to start based on listening to what's going on before I go on.
Well, because I do open mics a lot, I'm often encouraged to do the shit sandwich where you open with good, you close with good, and then you put your stuff in the middle that you want to try. But my memory is so bad that I just often open with new because I'm like, I'm not going to remember it.
Mate, when I'm doing new stuff, like going to like a mic or something to do new stuff, I will often start with the most brand new thing because it's that's the thing I'm thinking about before I go on.
But everyone's like, you got to warm them up. I don't have time for that. I don't have the memory for that.
Just smile, take the mic out of the stand and go. It's not. I mean, that also depending where you are in a lineup, they don't need warming ups. Like if you're in a lineup of 10 people, they don't need warming up 10 times.
Yeah.
They're in a mood. They know the context. They're not surprised when the next act comes up. You know what I mean? The MC says your name.
Yeah.
They go, oh, he's probably going to start with a joke.
Yeah.
So just fucking start with a joke.
Yeah. Well, I do a little bit of a trick at the room I run, which you came and MC the other night.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was. We were starting to get a crowd back there. Winter killed us, but we're doing it right now. I normally put Billy Darcy as the first act because I'm like, if the MC doesn't warm up, Billy will.
Yeah,
that's just my
sure
little
Billy
safety
loves
net.
that.
Yeah, Billy comes with a page of new.
Yeah,
it's still going to be red hot.
Yeah,
so it's fine. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I wanted to ask you some personal questions.
Yep, go
about fatherhood because I'm getting married in March and I'm thinking about having a few kids or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this weird transition phase of my life where I'm thinking about becoming a bit more of a cowboy and doing a bit more creative things and pulling back on work a little bit and running rooms and writing and doing commercial work and trying to make a living off stand-up and maybe some fun radio TV stuff as well. How do you juggle that sort of lifestyle when you've got kids?
So my thing would be if that's what you want to do, then there's two things. Like the way I approach it is I'm always going to work hard for my job. I'm going to want it. If I've got something I love, then I'll always be willing to work hard at it. But also you realize once you've got kids and you've got that responsibility that you'll always bust yourself for them. So that thing of having a bit of responsibility kick in and going, okay, well, I need to make this work. I will do. Like it is a pretty bloody good motivator for that sort of stuff. And then, but also not having the ego attached to it, where if you need to work part-time, like if you need to, take a bit where you go, okay, I need to go pick up some shifts here to cover the family thing, I'll do that. But I'm not, because you're focused on making sure your family's fine and what you want to do, the career you want to go down, you're working hard at, then you'll find that the part-time, whatever you pick up part-time, whatever you're doing extra side work to make money, as long as you're not neglecting where you want to go, you'll you work it out. Like I think I was telling you before, like when I started comedy when my oldest son would have been a bit over 12 months old. So it was about.
What year was this?
2009.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So he was 13 months old, and I started doing open mics and stuff. And the thing, like everyone used to, when I had the two little kids and I'd be out doing gigs and that in the middle of the week, like everyone was like, how do you get off? Like, how are you doing these gigs? And I'm like, reality is like kids don't stay up late. My wife had a job where she'd go to bed reasonably early. And so after about 8 o'clock at night, everyone was like
Yeah.
or 8:30, my wife would be in bed because she'd start work at like 5 or 6 in the morning. So it didn't matter if I was there. I was there when they needed me there, and then I'd go out. So then, like yeah, you'd be out late, and the kids would be up early, and you'd be up with the kids. But one, they're your kids. You're not gonna everyone's tired in that sense. So what difference does it make? And then when they're little, they take naps. Take a nap when they take a nap.
Absolutely.
Like you I don't know. Like the thing about the joy of kids throwing you out of routine is you don't actually. They like a routine, but their routine's like a bit ad hoc anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and kids are as flexible. Like if my kids didn't know any different than that, so they just are as flexible as whatever the lifestyle is you're running. So
Do you think stand up is selfish?
no, like fuck, you can. It's a weird. That's a weird way to look at it because. And I'm in an interesting spot in that my wife's super supportive in terms of it's not that she's like like you need to chase this dream. It's just like she sees what I get out of
Well, that's
stand
what I was
up.
going to say. Is like I could be a provider and I'd be miserable, but my family would be better off. But I will
But
be a better husband and father if I'm happy and
but
fulfilled.
that's
Yeah.
what and that's what I remember my wife talking to me about it. She goes, I'd much rather the kids like we have a bit less money and the kids see you chase like working
And
something
show them
passionate.
that's possible.
Yeah, and
What?
passionate
Yeah,
about what you're doing.
for sure.
Because she's passionate about her job, and
Yeah.
then so if we can see like and the kids see like we both get really busy, we've got a lot of stuff on, and we just all make time for each other and that sort of stuff, so that there's no barriers to being able to. You don't have to neglect one thing necessarily to achieve another. You can,
Yeah.
if you sometimes you got to acknowledge like a big thing for me was early on. Like I used to take a lot of I used to have a lot of like when I was getting gigs regularly, I'd work a lot of weekends,
Yeah.
and then I'd try and take like maybe once every 6 weeks, just take either a Friday or a Saturday night off.
Yeah.
And I realised that when I did that, because it was the special thing that we were doing, I'd make a big deal of it. So I'd make pizzas, we'd watch a movie, we'd all sit and watch a movie together. We'd make it a big special night because I work weekends, my wife worked during the week, and then the kids. So the kids like you make like if you're getting less time with you all together, then you make the most of that time.
And that's my fondest memories of being a kid, just being with the family. We'd get KFC on a Saturday night and watch the rugby union because for some reason rugby union was always on Saturday nights when there was no league.
Used to be.
It was great, and I just just having dad home was the best. It was so cool. But yeah, I think sometimes I think stand up selfish because like all I do is talk about it, so I'm boring the shit out of my partner.
But you can have a corporate job.
Yeah, and talk.
That people all they do is talk about. All they do is think
But
about.
the
Like
thing
you can be
is-
out. There's people that work corporate jobs.
if you've met
that
them,
are gone.
yeah.
Like at the at the moment, my wife's job, her hours are crazy. She's out of the house way more than I am.
I mean, if you
But
had the
it's-
choice between me or an engineer at a dinner party, you'd pick me, yeah.
Yeah.
Like at least I'm bringing something to the fucking
Like,
table.
I like to think that you think I've got time to go to dinner parties.
But here's the thing:
I'll take the gig. Thanks.
yeah, true. I'm not having dinner. I'm having a chicken wing and a beer. The thing about comedy for me is I don't know if you picked up on this vibe, but I was a real loser. I was quite not isolated, but I wasn't super social. I enjoyed staying home, and I would just watch whatever comedy I could get my hand on, and it inspired me. And this is going to sound a bit wanky, but if someone sees what I'm doing and goes, "Oh, I want to do that too," or I can, like an open micer came to Sweeney's, the room I run, how do I get into comedy? And I sat down and told him, and he's in comedy now, and he's great. And he goes, "It was all thanks to you." And like I think of the comedians that inspired me. Mainly American comedians, people like Dimitri Martin I grew up watching and just thinking, oh yeah, like I learned how to write a joke just from watching specials and things like that. So if I could, sit down with someone, give them advice, or sit down with someone, give them a tag, like that to me is better than working as a GM for a shitty fucking business and making $300,000 a year and providing for a family, but being fucking miserable and not inspiring yourself or others.
Mm.
And that's like
And that's not to say there's people that do that and they get their fulfillment from that.
oh,
It's
that's
just
how
a
you're
different,
wired, yeah, for sure.
It's
And
a different wiring.
as I said, I am a bit wired that way. Like I could definitely see myself doing jobs like that, and I have, and I like doing the tech stuff. I like doing admin. But like, there's something if you have just a little bit of creativity, and if you're somewhat good at putting content out or writing jokes or putting an act together, you want to chase it.
Mm.
And it's funny when people are good and quit because it's like there was something
There's
missing.
plenty of them, mate. There's plenty of them. It's amazing. You'll see the people that stay and go over the years you do it. It's fascinating to see. But I mean, if by the time you get to a certain point when you're doing it long enough, it's only the people that really you got to really love it to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because most of it is like everyone loves the high of a real good set where you crush, but unless you are able to get fulfillment out of that whole process of going to the open mic where you're still working on it and it's not quite working, getting it to work, unless you're into unless you're willing to get fulfillment out of the process of wandering around your house, taking notes, trying to work it out before you go in there, trying to get, okay, where do I need to be? Like organize your calendar, all the stuff you need to do to get to that point where you can crush. Unless you can enjoy that process, then you're going to live 99% of your life pretty miserable and then just have that one little bit on stage where you're finally happy.
Well, doing even your act, say you've got a hot crowd, you're doing a theatre, you're doing your act, it's muscle memory, you might not be into it anymore, is not as fulfilling as the process. When you've got a new joke cooking and you're doing it at open mics and you're starting to build it and you're getting it to where it might make its way into your set, that's the most exciting part for me.
Yeah.
To be like, I think I have a new 5. Like that's crazy. Like again, stupid dumb ideas that I came up with are about to potentially make me some money or make a few people laugh. That's really exciting.
Yeah, and there's always that thing that'll because at the moment it's the new 5, but then it'll get to the point where you go, I think if I've got this I can construct this 20.
Yeah,
and that 20 is bulletproof. And then that turns into I've got a festival show, I've got a half hour, I've got a whatever that you want to put together, and then you get to the point where actually I think I've outgrown this and I'm starting to challenge. That's the next so there's always a new bit of fun.
For sure. I definitely feel like I'm outgrowing my act and I've got an idea for a festival show. I just got to write it. But my grand idea is to go give Melbourne a go, but I don't think I can do it next year because I'm getting married and we're going on our honeymoon around the time the festival's on. So I might go do it somewhere else like Adelaide or something first. And it's not going to be as jokey. It's not going to be a stand-up. It's going to be probably more stories and a bit of a narrative. And I've got this thing in my head ready to go and I just need to sit down with a blank page and get it written. But I've got this phobia of like stationery. So I don't like writing on it because I feel like it tarnishes it. I love clean, crisp paper.
You know what you need is one of those Inkmate little tablets, the ones you can write on.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to clean, crisp paper, but then it becomes a Word document in your computer.
Yeah. I have just I scrunch up, I don't respect my joke, so I put it on the worst bits of paper and scraps and receipts and stuff, and I'll have them in my pockets at gigs. And if I'm happy with a set, I'll do a nice dot point, write it out really nice on hand, and keep it somewhere crisp. But I've been rocking up the gigs and just winging it lately, because I'm not working towards anything. I've got my act, got some new stuff, and then I got this idea for a festival show. So I've really got nothing to do besides if I'm doing 5 or 10 or whatever.
That's where you got to set yourself those challenges.
All right, I'm doing a gig tonight in Glebe. I think I've only got one spot tonight. I'll open with my trans joke.
Open with that.
I'm going to live stream it to you,
and then
you can watch me die after that.
Then the next thing is with your festival show that you want to do, whatever elements you've got in there that you're going, I'm going to do this story, do that. So work out how to pull something out of them that you can do in a 5-minute or a 10-minute set.
And I know we're big fans of this person. She actually told me on my podcast that you were a big supporter of hers when she was starting out, Steph Broadbridge. It's so incredible to watch her do her club act and then do her festival show, because they're very different, but then she plucks these little jokes and puts them integrates them into this festival arc. It's just so beautiful. And I honestly keep brown nosing her, but she's just the fucking best. And
No, she's good.
yeah,
And a lot of time for everyone. Very helpful.
that's what I praised her on, and I was like, why do you hang out with these fucking misfits? And she just wants to get back, and that's what fucking stand-up's about. If you're teaching a fucking comedy class, fucking kill yourself. You should be doing that for free.
Oh, mate. Yeah. I don't think I've ever done a comedy.
Also, Lifeline 13,
Yeah.
12 foot. Whatever.
Mate, we are getting the time.
Yeah,
But what I
thank
do
you.
need to ask
Oh,
is,
shit.
so 5 years' time, everything's sort of broken your way. Like you've worked out how to get this all to work for you. So you're full time. But what does that look like? Are you doing TV? Are you doing radio? Are you doing stand up? Is there a mix? What's the
mix.
ultimate?
Stand up is always going to be there. You will
Mhm.
always do it. It will be how you stay fresh. I
Mhm.
think a lot of people who get opportunities and stop doing stand up become not very relevant. So stand up's going to always be there. The mix would be breakfast or drive radio with one TV gig. I would love a late night talk show once a week. But in my head as well, no one's really given the late night talk show a red hot go in Australia doing it 4 or 5 nights a week. So that would be fun. But I just don't know how. I mean, a lot of these things I have dreams for, I will probably end up just doing myself. I'll build a studio.
That's the
I'll
new.
produce it, and that's fine. I'm getting married, and my mates for my bucks are going to fund a pilot for a late night talk show. So
Oh wow.
either we rent a studio, or we build a studio. I really want Brendan Cowell to be my first guest, so hopefully he's not filming Avatar. We can book him. But yeah, I've got all these ideas for like radio. I've got some pending stuff happening there, whether it's on air or paneling and all that sort of stuff. So I'll creep my way back in, but at the same time, you were just at my place. I've got a radio studio at home. I've got a television studio. Like I can do it myself. And that's what shits me sometimes. People go, I want a writer's job. I want this, I want that. But they just want something cushy. If you really wanted to be a writer, you'd write. You'd write for yourself. You'd write for others. You'd write spec scripts. But people want to be in a writer's room with a steady paycheck, where now you can just do this and have a complete creative control. You don't have to talk to a network. Yeah, you might not be making as much money, but you'll still be fulfilled.
Yeah.
If I just had a late night TV show once a week with an audience and I didn't make much money off it and it didn't have to be on a network, it didn't even have to be on a great streaming platform, if it's just live on YouTube once a week and I could book good guests and, maybe 500 to 1,000 people watched it, I think I'd be extremely fulfilled. I've worked for networks, and the best thing about I was very behind the scenes, but like I had access to a studio, so I would go in the weekends and film stuff, and that's all a network could really provide to me right now is money and access to a studio or
Resources.
a team. But like I can build that myself. I'm googling stuff right now. I'm going to buy lights. I'm buying a few cameras. I'm buying a vision switcher. Let's just do it, and then I can say cunt. And they won't beat me.
I'm beeping that.
Ah, don't
no.
censor me, Andrew.
I won't be. Mate, just plug, before we go, plug anything you want to plug. Where can people find you and where can they find your podcast?
I would love to plug my podcast. It's called I Came Here With Nothing. You Just Did It. We sit back and watch Deal or No Deal and try and commentate it like a football game. You got really into it. I think your radio experience really popped. So yeah, it's a fun little podcast. I Came Here With Nothing. It's on YouTube and Spotify right now. You can also catch me on Instagram. My handle is @Renkema. I don't even know how to spell it, but you'll find me.
Excellent. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Cheers.
Mate, thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Barney.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.